Roar is a coloring and saturation device that can add subtle warmth to your sounds or obliterate them with wild distortion. Let's take a look. Here, I have Operator playing a simple triangle wave into a default instance of Roar. Let's take a listen. I'll start by turning up the drive in Roar, which sets the input signal. Notice how when I increase the drive, the yellow area in the shaper visualizer gets bigger. I can set the level of the shaper here, turn it on and off, and set the wave shaping amount on top. Roar features a wide variety of shapers. We have bit crusher, polynomial, or fractal, and many more. If I adjust the bias, I can create a DC offset in the sound, which results in asymmetrical clipping. Over on the right, I have a built-in filter. We can adjust the frequency cutoff here and the resonance down below. I can set the filter to be pre or post shaping, turn the filter on and off, and select from a variety of filter types down below, including things like resampling, comb, and many more. Let's move away from this baseline for now and focus on this drum loop. Roar features a built-in compressor on the master output. Let's turn it up. Here, I can choose to enable or disable the high-pass filter in the compressor sidechain, which prevents too much gain reduction from happening in the low end, such as for my kick. Here, I can set the output of the wet signal and adjust the dry-wet down below. Let's turn the compressor down for now and play with Roar's tone control. Turning up the tone boosts the high frequencies and turns down the low end. And turning it down creates the opposite effect. Here, I can define the frequency for the low shelf filter used in the tone control. Let's turn up the wave shaping amount and turn up the tone. Notice how when I really crank the tone, it sounds quite harsh. But if I turn on color compensation, Roar applies a mirrored version of the EQ the tone knob is creating before the output. On negative tone values, color compensation prevents the low end from distorting too much. Let's play with Roar's feedback modes. I can start by turning up the amount of feedback here, which feeds the output of Roar back into its input. I can invert the phase of the feedback set on here, which results in a different character. Notice how when I pause the sound, the feedback quickly dissipates. This is because the feedback gate is currently enabled. If I play it again and turn this off, pausing the signal again causes the feedback to ring out for much longer. I can adjust the frequency and bandpass width of the feedback filter down below, and change the feedback time on top. Let's switch the feedback mode from time to sync, which allows it to be synced to the clock in musical increments. I can do triplet as well, dotted, or tune the feedback to a specific note. Let's turn the feedback amount down for now and play with the filter. I'll switch the filter type to comb and turn up the resonance for a sweet, phasey effect. Let's say I wanted the frequency dial to move all on its own. To do this, I'll open up the modulation tab. This section is divided into two parts. We have the mod sources here, which include 2 LFOs, an envelope follower, and a noise generator, as well as the matrix, where I can assign these different mod sources to change different parameters. Let's assign LFO 1 to control the filter 1 frequency. I can go directly to LFO 1 by clicking here. Here I can play with the LFO shape, morph the shape, or smooth it out. I can change the rate here and switch the mode from synced to free, or choose from a variety of synced time values. Let's go back to sync for now and switch it to a square wave. I'll change the rate back to 1 bar and then go back to the matrix. I'd like to assign this LFO to control something else. Let's try the shaper amount. I'll click there and simply drag up again. Sweet! I can control the global amount of modulation down below. At 0%, essentially all of my modulations are bypassed. Let's clear all of my modulations for now by clicking this X here. I'd like to assign the envelope follower to control the filter frequency, so I'll click and drag up here. The envelope follower generates an envelope based on the incoming signal. To solo out the dry input signal, let's turn on these headphones. I'll start by turning the frequency all the way down on the filter and lowering the width. Now, my kick will only affect the filter movement. To hear this, let's turn the headphone icon off. Sweet! We can also increase the gain to make the effect more prominent. Let's go back to the matrix, clear this modulation, and try the noise generator instead. We have 4 different modes for the noise generator: simplex, wander, sample and hold, and brown noise. Let's go back to sample and hold and change the rate. I can also smooth this out like I did with the LFOs. That's sounding great, but let's say I wanted to add even more processing to my drums. To do this, I'll switch the routing from single to serial. This will introduce a second stage of processing. Let's press play and turn up the amount of shaping on stage 2. Next, I'll switch the filter to resampling, go to the matrix, and map the envelope to the filter 2 frequency. Now, the output of stage 1 is sent into stage 2, and I can control the mix between the two with the blend section. I can also switch the routing from serial to parallel. Now, the signal is split into 2, and each stage processes it independently. I can also switch to mid-side mode. Now, stage 1 processes the mid signal, and stage 2 processes the sides. Finally, I can switch to the feedback mode. Now, stage 1 processes the direct signal, and stage 2 processes the feedback. Notice how when my feedback amount is all the way down, nothing comes out of stage 2. But if I turn up the amount, and maybe switch the feedback mode to a sync value, now I'm starting to get signal here. Sweet. I'm really happy with the sound of my drums, so let's take it back over to my bass. I'll go ahead and press play on the bass clip and switch the waveform coming out of operator into a sawtooth. Now, I'd really like to mangle and shape this sound, so to do this, I'll switch the routing from single to multiband. This allows me to split the incoming signal into low, mid, and high frequency bands that I can process independently. To take full advantage of this, I'll open up the breakout view for Roar and open up the modulation tab. I'll start by turning the low and high shapers off and isolating the mid-range. I'll turn the shaper amount up and switch to the Bit Crusher shaper. Next, I'll switch to the noise tab here and map the noise to the shaper 2 amount. Let's switch to sample and hold for a more rhythmic effect. I can control the crossover frequency for the low and mid bands here to isolate what frequencies this mid shaper controls. I can do the same for the high end as well. Let's turn the high and low shapers back on. I'll turn the top shaper into noise injection and turn the amount all the way up. I'll switch the filter to bandpass, turn the frequency down, and then map LFO1 to the cutoff. Let's click on LFO1 and change it to the upward sawtooth shape, and turn up the rate for a more rhythmic effect. Let's play with the crossover some more to really dial it in. Now let's hear the bass in the mix with my drums while I continue to play with the sound. Sweet. You can see with Roar's many different capabilities, the possibilities for sound design are truly endless.